Hello, can anyone hear me? This is Bob Ganussi.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so it's coming out on, might have been 10. Have we got it online or? Yeah.
We're online. We are ready.
Yeah. Hey, who's that stranger sitting in the chairman chair?
What was that?
I said, who's that stranger that's sitting in the
I don't know. I'm not
chairman
sure. I'm still
chair?
a little jet lag, so no worries.
Hey, Andy, welcome back.
Oh, thanks.
Do you have a good trip, Andy?
Oh, it's great. Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Just a few missed connections and a couple of them are right at the very end. So alrighty, well, I guess we've got 6:30 and a quorum online and here, so we'll call the meeting to order and with a roll call here in the room first.
Joy McCoy.
And online, we've got
Bob Ganussi.
Margaret Bowles.
Peggy Smith.
and then Andy Miller. So need an approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Any opposed? Thank you. Then on the consent agenda, I think we just have the minutes. So a motion to approve the consent agenda.
move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, an open forum. So do we have anything for open forum this evening? And I think online we just have our planning commission members. We don't have, and nobody public. So, okay, so nothing on open forum. So we have a public hearing and possible action for the Strom Townhomes final plat. Do we need to have a motion to open the public hearing, or I don't think that procedurally do we, or
It's a good question. I don't think so. I think we just open the public hearing, correct?
Well,
Yeah.
I like a motion to open the public hearing, open
Sure.
and close it.
okay. So if we could have a motion to open the public hearing on the Strom Townhomes.
Motion to open public hearing on the Strom Townhomes.
In a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So we'll start with a staff report.
Great. Thank you, Andy. And I'll share my screen here and get the presentation going. Okay, so the application before the Planning Commission this evening is the final plat application for Strom Townhomes. And I do want to first maybe give a brief apology to Andy and Peggy, because Andy was not present for the preliminary plat application, and Peggy was not a planning commissioner back in March. So the way I wrote the staff report kind of brushed off maybe some of the things that were reviewed and kind of approved and accepted at the preliminary plat stage. But this presentation does go through the full application in detail. But if there are any questions at all, specifically Andy and Peggy, because I know this is your first time seeing this, please feel free to interrupt me. So quick overview of the development. Bison Investments is the applicant and property owner. This development is located on Lot 2 of the Clayton subdivision, generally known as the Barn Lot. This is on the northern side of Clayton Court, in between Clayton Court and the Fraser River. The development proposes 4 townhome residential units, as well as an approximately 725 square foot commercial building with outdoor patio. The property is in the Riverwalk Zone District, and this request is recommending approval of the final plat application. So to orient ourselves, the parcel circled in red is the subject parcel of this development proposal. Again, located on the northern end of Clayton Court. between the street and the Fraser River. This is just south of the parcel that was recently deeded to Fraser Valley Arts for the planned Arts Center. Talking about the review timeline for this final plat application. So in March 27th, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the preliminary plat and site plan. And then in April, the applicant submitted the final plat application and the referral review period occurred. And then that leads us to today, today's meeting, the public hearing for the final plat application. And certainly there was a lot of, conversation and activity before this. If you all remember, this parcel was involved in the ballot measure, the land swap. And, when that vote failed in November, really the town and the applicant have been in conversation about their development plans kind of since that time. And, their preliminary plat application was submitted back in January, approved in March. So again, this is just a snapshot of the final plat kind of timeline. Public notice was provided for today's public hearing. It was published in the Sky High News, Middle Park Times on April 24th. That's the, legal notice as it appeared in the newspaper. The applicant also mailed out notices to nearby property owners 2 weeks ago as required by code. And those affidavits are provided in the meeting packet. It's attachments 13, 14, and 15 for reference. Here's an image of kind of the existing conditions of the site, or at least as of October of last year. Certainly not what it looks like right now with the snow, but largely undeveloped. There is that existing barn structure on the property though. And here is a view of what is proposed. This is straight from the applicant's site plan document. But because, sometimes these are hard to visualize, the applicant has provided some renderings of the development. And here's another one. So here's the zoning map for the area. The parcel, as I mentioned, is located in the Riverwalk zone, largely surrounded by other properties also in the Riverwalk zone. On the other side of the Fraser River, you have the Wapiti Meadows, apartment complex, which is zoned medium density multifamily residential, but largely consistent uses within this area. So these are some of the things that were kind of emphasized and discussed through the preliminary plat application and public hearing back in March for that application. So the intent of the Riverwalk district. The intent of a zone district is essentially kind of a vision or purpose statement, kind of saying, development in this zone district should do what exactly. And the intent statement for the Riverwalk district can be summarized, in these bullet points here, development that creates a high density walkable mixed use neighborhood, integrates the historic downtown with the river, generates downtown redevelopment, economic revitalization, and so on. So, town staff really believes that the proposed development largely meets the intent of the Riverwalk district, namely with providing high density residential development and commercial uses on Clayton Court. Development integrates with the existing Fraser River Trail, and the future car space at the existing trail connection to Clayton Court will help activate the northern end of the entire Clayton Court corridor.
So let me ask a question about this
Sure.
plot, if I could.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember, we had quite a debate about the position of the commercial in this district, whether it faces the street or the river.
Mhm.
And I thought we kind of settled on, or does this language about positioning closely to the street come from the zoning definition, or is it an interpretation?
So the commercial requirement on Clayton Court, you're asking where that comes from?
No, whether
Or-
it faces the street or the river.
Sure. So there's language throughout the Riverwalk zone section regarding, like the last bullet point says there, activate uses along the street and the Fraser River.
So it's an and sort of thing.
There is an and statement there. Let me see if I can.
Well, that's, yeah.
No, it's
And I
important
wanna
to pull
talk
up
to
the
applicant a bit about this too. there's thought that goes into it, but I know it was kind of we struggled with that one as to.
Right. I guess I just want to reference the language in our code so I don't misspeak, but the only requirement for commercial uses is to be located on Clayton Court on the
Right.
street.
Mhm.
Again, within the zone district, there's language about activating uses along the street and Fraser River.
It's okay.
And then later in the building design, mixed use, commercial and mixed use development, there's, I'll just read this off. Well, there is a statement here, ground floor commercial uses shall be adjacent to street frontages as much as possible. And then there's actually an or statement here. It says, it speaks to activating uses along the street or Fraser River
Okay.
and promote the walkable nature of the district. So
Yeah.
I think the language around, citing commercial uses, it's required along Clayton Court. And as far as locating them on the river, it's less strong language, if that makes sense.
Yeah, although it's called the Riverwalk District, but anyway,
Indeed.
yeah, okay,
Let's get back to where we were.
thank you.
Any other questions from the other commissioners on this intent statement? All right, so moving right along, some of the zone standards, talking about the site's use, it's a mixed use development proposal. It's a mix of uses in the same development area or group of buildings. That's permitted in Riverwalk. The intent is to have kind of mixed use development in this area. And then also the development proposal meets all applicable zoning standards, setbacks, building height, open space, residential density, et cetera. Those are detailed in the staff report. Also, staff believes that the commercial building that's provided largely meets the requirement to provide commercial uses for the first 20 feet in depth along Clayton Court. Again, as required by the code. So diving into some of the specific aspects of the property with regards to zoning standards, the site's access is proposed via a 26-foot wide driveway, paved driveway. This meets both town requirements and East Grand Fire Protection District requirements. Parking standards, the development is providing 2 spaces per townhome unit, 1 garage space, 1 driveway parking space, and that meets code requirements. Additionally, the town is working through infrastructure design and ultimately construction, obviously for improvements on Clayton Court, extending a water main through Clayton Court, paving the road, adding sidewalks, and part of that will include parallel parking on both sides of the road. It's anticipated that 2 parking spaces will be provided along the development's frontage, and town staff is allowing those parking spaces to count towards the required parking for the commercial structure. And just as a note, moving forward, as other properties on Clayton Court develop or redevelop, the town will allow any parallel parking spaces in front of those properties to count towards required parking minimums as is allowed per code. Landscaping and trash enclosure. So the applicant did provide a conceptual landscaping plan. However, the town is requesting, kind of at a minimum, just quantities and types of proposed plantings to be provided. I want to note that because this is a mixed use development in the Riverwalk zone, landscaping is not required per code, but it's certainly strongly encouraged, and given that the applicant is proposing landscaping, the town is simply just requesting some additional information. The conceptual landscaping plan that was provided by the applicant is attachment 6 in the packet. As well, the trash enclosure, this was a comment from the preliminary plat review, and now with the final plat application, the applicant has provided, architectural details of the proposed dumpster enclosure. wooden shiplap siding that matches what's to be provided on the townhomes and commercial building. Yes, Peggy?
I had a question. I mean, it's kind of landscaping part of it was, it looks like they're using brick pavers or some kind of a paver system. Is that for the driveways? Is that just architectural license or is that a fact?
The applicant nodded yes, but I'll let them speak more to that.
Hi, Peggy,
Okay.
Kevin Rifkin,
Hey, Kevin.
applicant. So we are using permeable pavers next to the driveways, just for snow melt, similar to what we did at our last project. So that during the summer, if you need to drive on it, you can. But during the winter, you can throw snow on it and it still melts through.
So it's where the snow storage is? Or
Yes.
because you're going to have asphalt where the driveways are.
Yeah, concrete or asphalt, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I was worried that it was going to be pavers and I thought that was going to be a nightmare with the freeze thaw. So thank you. I think that's a better
problem.
choice.
Thank you, Peggy. So speaking of snow storage, adequate snow storage has been provided for areas to be cleared, which includes driveways, walkways, loading areas per code. There's no loading areas per se, in this plan, but driveways and walkways. And then the applicant did provide kind of a, basic snow maintenance plan per the party wall agreement that was provided. That party wall agreement is attachment 11 in the packet. Exterior lighting, this was something that was not provided in the preliminary plat application and was a condition of approval, but with the final plat application, the applicant has provided an exterior lighting / photometric plan. It does appear to comply with town code requirements with regards to, lighting intensity and illuminance measures and things like that. The only request from the town is that, there's a note on this plan, explicitly stating that all light fixtures and bulbs be dark sky compliant. On that lighting plan, the applicant has provided, images of the proposed fixtures, which, appear to be fully hooded, which would be dark sky compliant. But again, just requesting that note be added. This lighting plan is attachment 5 in the packet. So ultimately, town staff recommends approval with conditions. Those conditions are outlined in the resolution as well as in the staff report. But these are essentially the conditions as they read on those two documents. So the town will require that all pending referral comments be addressed from both town staff and referral external agencies. External referral agencies, excuse me. The applicant did address a majority of the comments from the preliminary plat and site plan submittal, but there are still some pending comments to be addressed. Those comments are summarized as attachment 16 in the packet. Another condition of approval is for the applicant to execute a development improvements agreement for the private drainage and private landscaping. Frankly, this was something that was kind of missed by town staff at the preliminary plat submittal. In review of their development application, all of their utility infrastructure is private, and our DIA doesn't cover private infrastructure except for drainage, stormwater infrastructure, as well as private landscaping. And that makes sense, especially, when you think about the context of this site adjacent to the Fraser River. Essentially, this DIA would just ensure that drainage infrastructure is built as according to the plans say it will be. But ultimately, that infrastructure is privately owned and maintained. Last one, we request that the applicant pay fees in lieu of land dedication for parks and schools. At the preliminary plat submittal stage, I mentioned in the staff report that staff really hadn't made a determination initially on this item, partially because, when this area was initially subdivided, there was a subdivision improvements agreement with the original property owner that had improvements that the town needed to make, and the property owner provided some parcels to the town, namely Lot 1 to the north of this property, as well as the lot that the HTA building sits on. So at the time, I wasn't sure if that prior subdivision and prior subdivision improvements agreement precluded any land dedications per our current code requirements. And my understanding is that this application would still be required to provide these. Land dedication or fee in lieu, the site is too small to really feasibly provide a land dedication, so we're requesting a fee in lieu of those items.
Did that come from the town attorney or?
I'm getting confirmation from Kent on this, but so I believe I noted that. So if Kent says it's not required, then this condition goes away, but
Yeah.
I believe it is.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
One thing, I noticed the fire department, I thought they'd asked for 26 feet on the drive in front of the buildings.
Yeah, so I actually reached out to Ryan with East Grand Fire District to confirm this. Let me just go back to that slide. So there's a 26-foot wide driveway kind of entering into the site, and then when it goes to the north to access the townhomes, it narrows down to 20. There's a requirement that, a access road for a aerial fire apparatus,
Over 30 feet, right?
right, for buildings over 30 feet, that access road has to be 26 feet wide. But because, so I think if this was one continuous structure, Clayton Court would be that access road. But in this case, because you have a building in front and then, the townhomes in the rear, that 20-foot wide driveway in between the two is the access drive. But what Ryan from East Grand Fire told me is essentially, so long as they can show that a fire truck can navigate those turns, then they would allow the narrower driveway width. So that is a comment from East Grand Fire. That's a condition of approval, as it's a referral comment that needs to be addressed. But East Grand Fire is fine with that narrower driveway.
20 feet.
Hmm,
I
yes.
imagine that ladder truck would pull straight in and just sit there. So.
Right, yeah. It probably wouldn't even navigate that corner,
Yeah,
I would imagine.
Such a
Yeah,
small lot.
right.
Okay. Any other comments from the planning commission on this, at least the staff report?
I just do have one question, please. Does the anticipated parallel parking by the property fulfill the 3 off-street parking that Whitmer mentioned for land use condition?
Right. So I'll speak to that comment from Whitmer. I do think it needs to be edited. So our code states that for commercial buildings, for every 400 square feet of floor area, 1 parking space is required. So in that comment from Whitmer, they included the area of the patio.
Right.
However, floor area is actually defined in our code as space just inside walls. So that patio space shouldn't be counted towards parking, required parking. So simply the commercial building is 725 square feet. So rounding up to 800, 2 parking spaces are required. Yeah. Mhm.
Any other questions from the commission before we hear from the applicant? Okay. Just remind us of name and residence.
Of course. Kevin Rifkin, 88 Alderbrook, Fraser, with Bison Investments. First, want to thank everyone for taking time out of a off Wednesday night. I know everyone didn't have to do this, so we really appreciate it. So I just want to, Gary, are you able to pull up the site plan while I talk?
Yeah.
If possible?
Yeah, just give me a second.
So this lot and this project we've been toying around with now for about a year and a half and really trying to figure out what can we do and then what's the best use within those restrictions. And when we first started looking at this, there was a whole different town staff, few different faces on the planning commission, and a different code. And so one of the things that we worked on and waited on was the redevelopment or rezoning into the Riverwalk district, which changed our plan significantly, right? It required the commercial. Originally, there was no commercial here. And that's something we wanted to do, right? Is we think Clayton Court is ripe for commercial development, for a walkable area, for a good mixed use area that's going to attract kind of a whole crowd. And so once we started to design this with the new Riverwalk district, we wanted to make this the first piece in the next 10 pieces that are going to happen. So when we look at this, and Andy, I want to address your comment because I want to build retail on the river. This is, and I'll go into that, is extremely difficult just because it's such a long, narrow site. And there's a 26 foot drive aisle required. So per the code, and one of the challenges we faced is if we were going to put commercial back onto the river, we would have had to have a 26 foot drive and then parking. And we didn't want this to be a parking lot.
Yeah.
So what we did here, and credit to our architect more than Greg and I, because we just told him the code and he went off and did this, is we designed this so that you have the 26 foot drive, and then where our dumpsters sit right there is when the lot next to this gets developed, we'll move the dumpsters and give them an easement. So there's only one curb cut and then it goes in. And what that does is pave the way for commercial on Clayton Court, to the, what would that be? South of it. And then also commercial on the river there and parking tucked behind. So holistically looking at this, the three goals we had were first, take a flyer on Clayton Court with some commercial. And I think we're going to have some good success there. But right now, trying to tell someone that, hey, you should sign a lease or buy this building, and you look at the status of the barn and an unpaved road, it's definitely a little more challenging. So we wanted to design something really cool that looks good. Second is hide the townhomes. When we were going through the zoning, rezoning process, a lot of the concern with the public was we don't want a 35, 45 foot wall of buildings right on Clayton and there's no sunshine. So we deviated the heights of the townhomes and the retail to create some depth. And then third is working with the art center, and being really close with, in lockstep with Steve and DAO, who's starting to do the preliminary design there, to complement them and not block their view. I don't know if everyone's seen the new art center design, but what we want to do is for the kind of main money area is to have that look over our project and not block anything. And so that's why we kept the retail. I think it's 14 feet at the peak or 15 feet. And everything in the art center on the second floor looks beyond that, can see the ski resort, can see everything. So those were our goals, to make this as less invasive as possible. Going forward, I mean, it's a very small site for us and a relatively small project. But the goal of this too is to spur development down there along with the public improvements, so that people can look at this and say, okay, now this is feasible to go build more commercial. We have proof of concept, and really build out Clayton Court and hopefully eventually get a few restaurants or retail or everything on the river. And then the last thing I'll add is we tried to step the townhomes back, if you go to the site plan, to start to open up. So we have land on the back that eventually, if we do, or the town ever wants to expand the trail, that we're more than happy giving part of that land back, and expanding the trail and creating because I know one of the goals was a riverfront park eventually, and bleeding that into a riverfront park on our site, on the next site, and the next site. So it was a tough one to get to where we are. And we had to make some tweaks to make sure we could get the sidewalk 10 feet. And so we gave a little bit to the town. We got a little, I think 1 foot on that side. But overall, we're very excited where we are and think this is going to be a good catalyst to get Clayton Court moving.
Makes good sense.
I think Peggy raised her hand.
Yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and this might not be something you know, Kevin, but staff would know. Is there gonna be 10-foot sidewalks on either side of that street?
On Clayton Court.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the plan. So they're showing that on their site plan. The design is yet to be finalized, but that is the intention to have 10-foot sidewalks on both sides of Clayton Court, as well as parallel parking on both sides.
So half of that sidewalk's on their property, half is on the town right away then.
It's actually not. So part of this, and if I could zoom in here, this blue line on the left was the original property line, and this blue line on the right. Through this plat, they are dedicating 5 feet of their property as right of way for Clayton Court. The town intends to do this with other properties along Clayton Court, so that we have sufficient right of way to provide those 10-foot
And the
sidewalks.
sidewalk ends up all on town property then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm in California and they put sidewalks in residential areas on one side of the street, which
Sure.
works out really well in California, but I don't know how we manage snow. How you access anything on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board as we go along here? Oh, Kevin, any more notes or?
No, the one I wanted to add is Bob. So we explored the moving the patio again, and got some more opinion. And so with the way the art center's designed, we are working on putting in a kind of a cool little window on the art center side and then a mural on that side instead of the patio, and having the patio disturb them. So we took your comment to heart last time, but couldn't figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, here's the elevations for that commercial building, and this is the window I think you just mentioned, Kevin.
Yeah, so we're going to make that a little larger.
Sure.
And then so we moved the door, you can kind of see to that side. So the goal is that, and we're trying to finalize a bakery in here. But the goal is that you're walking out of the bakery close to where the Future Art Center is, the river trail, and then up Fraser Avenue. So we moved everything to be that focal point of you're looking straight down from the train station, and that's what you see is the river trail, the door, people hanging out outside there, with the goal of some kind of activation, albeit small, but mighty.
Yeah, and I guess I also just want to note that there is a door right onto Clayton Court as proposed now. That's not shown in these slick renderings, but yeah, so.
That's all I have on my end.
So a couple
Great.
questions, Kevin, on the upper level where the bedrooms are, you've got an office in the center, 2 units
Mhm.
instead of a bedroom. Is that an egress issue or?
So it will not be sleeping space. There's no egress in there. It's purely an office.
So there's no way to control that in the future. I'm trying to remember, does code require an egress?
For a
Mhm.
bedroom,
For a
yes. So our max occupancy will be dictated by that. Obviously we can't control
Yeah,
what
what happens in the future, but
what they do, but one of the things, I mean, separate tangent, these will be sprinklered buildings per code as
oh,
well.
okay,
So
Right.
we're going to take the precautions as much as we can, that we can control, but what we can't control, we're unfortunately at the whim of the buyers.
sure. Okay. And then there's a long report about floodplain, and this is a question for staff and for what research you've done. And then the one comment from Kit too about the high water mark and a 35-foot setback from the river. I don't know how did high water mark get determined, and what do we think on floodplain? That's something that everybody asks me, and I know that this whole site bumps up
Yep.
from the river. It's pretty good elevation above the river. But thanks to all the years of fill that have been going in down there. So, but yeah, just some thoughts on the river setback and floodplain.
Yeah, I can give a quick answer there. So we are using right now, it's for an old plat, there's what they called a 5-foot stream setback. And what we found is that's 5 feet from the 30 feet, give or take, that we have to be back. We've been trying to measure the high water mark and it's not gone well. At sometimes we're 42 feet from the high water mark. We did a quick measurement and survey last week and we were 41 feet from the high water mark. So we're going to monitor it and see if it goes up anymore. My guess is we're probably right there now. That's going to be, we'll put that on the final survey. And then the floodplain, because as you mentioned, we're that far above, per the FEMA floodplain map, we're significantly out of any floodplain, and had to check that with title, and our insurance. So that's one of, I think, our conditions is to overlay the floodplain. And so we'll have that done, on the FEMA map.
So will you bump the floor level up a little bit though? That ground floor, there's talk about what elevation will that ground floor end up at. So
You know the exact.
Hi, this is Greg Beckler with Bison Investments. The finished floor elevation of the ground floor is about 6 feet above the existing trail. So we're significantly above the floodplain. So we won't bump the ground finished floor elevation any higher. We're well above the floodplain and the
so
trail.
the idea is you want to walk in off the grade level and right into the
Walk in off
unit.
the Clayton Court grade level, and then there'll be a big drop back down to where the trail actually
Right.
sits.
But you're not going to bump that up any higher off the grade at all then.
No, that we need to coordinate with Paul Johnson and Merrick on the public improvements, but we're gonna come in right off of grade of
Right,
those
yeah.
improvements, yeah. into
Okay.
flat.
And then something you guys talked quite a bit about the storm drainage, and the watershed group that I'm president of, we managed to get a grant from this Windy Gap Settlement Fund to look at overall stormwater in the town. And I'm sure that one of the areas we're going to look at down there is to try and get some kind of joint stormwater treatment so that all those different lots will have a way to have stormwater treated before it gets into the river. So I think there's enough property down there along the trail and before it gets to the river to do some pretty effective ways to do some wetland type treatments to make sure that everything comes off these sites ends up in good shape coming out of the river. But your initial filtration system looks like it'll do a good job of at least getting the main things out. But as it notes in the drainage plan, there'll be flood events and things that will overflow the system. So hopefully we can make this a joint effort to help this Riverwalk district not do any damage to the river. So
Definitely. And we are open to anything there. That was one thing we made sure is we're using the contact vortex, I think is what it's called for the separation.
right.
And we want to make sure that we're not doing any more harm into the Fraser River than we're creating. So we're trying to go net zero there, and any suggestions you have and anything we can do, we're open to. We're
Yeah.
spending up for that contact, as we want to make sure that's the case.
And the other thing that, in the interest of water, I'm hoping we'll look at our town regulations, and it already encourages xeriscape as much as possible in your landscaping plan. But that's certainly, as you specify species, doing native species and species that are once they get established or don't need irrigation would certainly be a benefit to the limited water supplies we have. So. just a
Definitely. And
request.
we'll include that in our, what you mentioned, Garrett, with the landscaping we're going to use. We'll send that out. And I think everything we're using is what you mentioned, and no irrigated grass. So all hardscape.
Yeah. Okay. And then the roof drains, I was having a hard time following this. Where do those drains hook up to?
So those are going to be interior drains,
Where do they go to though?
to the separator in the drainage plan
So,
and then
okay,
into the
that
river.
same contact, so
Yep.
not into the sewer system, obviously. Yeah,
Exactly. So we'll run it through the same system.
okay.
There were some comments and suggestions with Merrick about, like Andy was speaking about the riverbank stability and a possible covert. Also a comment about the manhole rim elevation being 15 feet below grade. So have you considered that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we're gonna take all those comments and work with them and work with right now the town and making sure that we can go under the trail, create that erosion control on the trail as well. And potentially I know Merrick wants some concrete there, and we're open to that, so there won't ever be washout. Do you know the answer to the manhole question?
Yeah, the data that we were using for elevations, what our surveyor was using versus what Merrick is using on their public improvements was just different. And so our surveyor now has I forget the name of it,
LiDAR.
something LiDAR data that is the exact same that Merrick's using. And so they're matching all of our depths and everything to match that data set.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And then there was talk about splitting up the snow plowing costs between the 4 townhome owners, but is there a plan for the commercial space to be separately deeded or?
Yeah, so the commercial space, one of the things we want to do is it's going to be separately deeded and we're going to potentially sell it to the end user. So they have ownership in their space with their business. And for us, it's candidly not a moneymaker. It's more of a, hey, let's get a good small business in here. Because of the way it's all separated, is they don't really have any costs because their parking is on the
Out
street.
front, isn't it? Yeah.
So we're trying to make it as cheap as possible for a new small business to operate.
Mhm.
And part of that was not having them to pay for snow plowing for stuff they're not going to use.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And where would the dumpsters go when that common access gets opened up?
Yeah, so when you look at the next site, when that opens up, it starts to get a lot wider. So we were thinking, I mean, the world's kind of our oyster if we don't control the site right now. But whoever does, if it's us, if it's someone else, we work with them to swing it either this way or that way and put it on the side of the new 26-foot road and create some space in between. We'll have to, regardless, the furthest townhome and whatever goes on this site, and create a new dumpster enclosure on the new site that's now shared and create an agreement with the new.
In exchange for that curb cut, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Any other questions for the applicant from the board or? Oh, Peggy, yep.
So I looked at this party wall agreement, which really didn't address a lot of the issues that I foresee, like how are you going to maintain the roof? How are you going to restain the building? The south building's going to get more sun. The north guy's going to take. He doesn't want to restain. He wants purple. Somebody wants blue. It just doesn't seem like it seems like you'd better have an attorney really look at this on who's going to pay, the insurance. What happens if the middle guy lets his insurance lap and he has a bunch of crazy people there from who knows where on VRBO and they overflow and damage your unit next door? All of the things that can happen that when you don't really have a HOA kind of in charge of it.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. And so one of the things we wanted to do is we're actually talking to a few HOA companies that we couldn't really sign up prior to getting this going. So likely what will happen before anything's marketed, anything's for sale, is we'll amend this and record a new party wall agreement with the HOA that we're going to use that encompasses the VRBO, the sun damage, all that good stuff. But these are the base rules that we want to record that allows us to get to where we need to be before engaging a property management company.
So you're going to go down the path of the party wall agreement instead of a formal HOA where you are paying in and you got dues and escrowing for roof replacement down the road and all of that?
That's the idea right now, and that there's a slight chance that changes. But since it's 4 townhomes, a lot of times what we've seen with our other developments is a party wall agreement. And obviously there's external cases where neighbors do not get along. But a party wall agreement can save a lot of money and can be beneficial. That being said, if we need to amend and put an HOA agreement in and we feel like that's the right step because this is not covering it, we're more than open to do that.
Okay, because isn't there something about the way it's platted originally? You kind of have to make a choice. It's not a flexible thing that you can move from party wall to HOA when down the road.
I don't believe so, but we'll check on that.
Yeah, once the units are sold, it's pretty hard to go back, isn't it?
Yeah, so we would have to do it before the units were sold. And that's kind of our goal right now, and to make sure we do that before that happens. But yeah, once it's sold, it's gone in the wind.
Does the count
Mhm.
regulations address this at all, or?
To be honest, my understanding is that town code and regulations really don't speak much to HOA declarations, restricted covenants, and bylaws. Really, I think the most that we can really ask for is listed here in this condition of approval is that they're recorded concurrently with the plat. And that's, typical. As far as, amending them and changing them after the fact, I also don't think that is a huge issue. I do think that's possible, but I'm not as knowledgeable. You know, so really, Peggy, the things you raised are all valid concerns, but I think that's more outside of maybe the purview of
Yeah.
the town's code, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I think until we
Okay.
sell off a plat, Peggy, it shouldn't be an issue since we have 100% control of all of the parcels post subdivision pre-lot sales.
Right.
So I don't see why that wouldn't be something we could accomplish after this, but again, I haven't confirmed that. But legally, we own all of the land and
Yeah,
rights.
from a few projects I've done, what we've seen is we usually do something like this, and then engage a lawyer, candidly, because a lawyer is going to charge us a ton of money to write all this. And we want to make sure this is happening. And it'll take a lawyer about 2 or 3 days, to knock this out. And then to Garrett's point, historically, I've always just amended it. But I think, I mean, you're bringing up very, very important points that we're going to hit on.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board?
I had a question, just about, you mentioned that you might want to sell off the commercial building. So how does that work? We subdivide again? How would you sell just that building?
So yeah, I can take that, Margaret. So right up on the screen is their plat. So
Oh,
if you
okay.
see, yeah. So lot 5 is the commercial lot.
Oh,
So
got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay, answered. Never mind.
no worries.
I'll lower hand.
Good question though.
And Peggy, it's going to be interesting now to watch how these permeable pavers work, because I think with the modern ways that are bedding these, they may work in a frost environment. And this is a low risk way to do it, but in the snow storage area, it's going to get plenty of frost, and it can be fixed easily, obviously. But if we can go to permeable pavers, even in driveways and parking lots, it'd be a wonderful thing. They really do pass the moisture down into the ground much more effectively. So, and there are a lot of new techniques for expansion in the soils to maybe make these work. And this will be interesting to see how this goes. I've got 2 pallets of them at home that one of these years I'm going to lay and see how they do, but we'll see how
Well,
they do here. So
Yes,
I have permeable pavers at my house and nobody's driving on them or plowing snow on them and they do tend to kind of move around.
yeah.
yeah,
You can go
And
out and fix it with a garden spade and a little bit of back work, whereas it's hard to bring in a new paving machine, So anyway,
yeah.
be interesting to see.
Well, I know the resort has really struggled with it.
Yeah,
And, they've got all those pavers and then they had people driving on it, and that's all snow melted, and so then it crushes the lines for the snow melt, and it's not it's
Hasn't
not
worked well.
perfect in this
Yeah, it hasn't worked
environment.
well. Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. And thanks again for coming out on your Wednesday night.
You bet. So any input from the audience? From the public? Okay. Anything more from the board?
Andy,
Yeah,
this is Bob. I
Yeah,
just
go ahead,
want
Bob.
to commend the development team. I think they had a tough site. It's not a big site. It's a tough site. There were a lot of things they were juggling. I appreciate they addressed my comment from the last meeting. And I think overall it's a really good plan and it will jumpstart our development in the Riverwalk district.
yeah, and my comment I think was addressed really well with I do hope we can have some really nice public and commercial spaces that face the river here, but I understand on this particular site, it'd be pretty much impossible, but I hope that we can encourage that as much as possible as we go down the way, because we just don't have a quiet place to have a cocktail in this whole valley. So this would be the place for that sort of thing. It'll be wonderful. So even if you don't drink cocktails, so
I'll join you there.
so I'd entertain a motion. I think we have that in the packet, right?
Yeah.
Bring that up if you would.
Oh, sure. I'll pull it up.
We
And
need to close the public hearing.
oh, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
Second.
I'll second.
Second from Peggy. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Public hearing is closed, so let's look at a motion if we could.
I make a motion to approve the planning commission resolution number 2024-0501.
Second.
I'll second it.
Now hang on just a second. We have some conditions that we'll review real quickly.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just pull those up. So there's one more on the next page, but if the commissioners would like to read through this.
They're pretty much bookkeeping and then one.
Yeah, so I guess just to talk through them, condition 1 is addressing all outstanding review comments. Condition 2 is to execute a development improvements agreement as approved by the town and provide surety. Again, that's to cover the private drainage and private landscaping. Condition 3 is paying fees in lieu of park and school land dedications. Again, if determined to be required by further legal review. Condition 4 is more kind of bookkeeping type things regarding, the Mylar to be recorded with the county, address map for 911 and EMS. And then lastly, 5 is just stating that the DIA and any applicable HOA document should be recorded concurrent with the final plat.
And so Peggy, in your motion, would you just by reference attach those conditions or? I think your microphone's off.
I move to approve the planning resolution 20-24-0501, subject to the conditions that we just reviewed.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll second it now.
Okay, thanks, Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right, we pass. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all.
So any other business from the planning commission members? Discussion of any future agenda items?
I think we should have added a Andy's Adventures recap to the other business, but
No
I'm just,
worries.
I'm just,
Some
teasing.
other time.
Yeah.
I did have a question for you, Garrett, just while it's at the top of my
Yeah.
head. That I did review the conditions that were in there, and does there need to be something like I mean, it's recommended regardless, but something expressly written for dark sky compliance or field study requirement, anything like that? It kind of seems like it's included in that document.
Yeah, it is. So, one of the referral comments was with regards to adding a note to the lighting plan, which will be incorporated into their site plan. And exterior lighting will also be verified as part of their, building application process. So there'll be once the buildings are constructed, I will personally go out and look at their exterior lighting at night. So, yeah.
That's what I assumed,
Yes.
but I wanted to clarify for myself. Thank you so
No, yeah,
much.
no worries.
And this photometric plan that's required by code too is
Yep.
really detailed and gives you a firm idea of
Mhm.
what's going to happen. So, but it's important that the old Twin Rivers right across, or not, the
What PD?
condos across the street from me there, they put up these huge lights that shine right into that little cabin's windows right on the railroad track. So lighting makes a big difference
Yep.
when you're right in the middle of town. So I think our code addresses that pretty well.
And it's a great design. I like it.
Anything else?
I just wanted to mention I will not be in the country for the May meeting, so just for quorum purposes, to let you know I won't be around.
Thank you, Margaret.
How about just real quick? I guess everyone else on the call is planning to be in attendance for May 22nd.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Yes, I'll be here, Garrett.
Thank you, Bob. And you're muted, Peggy.
I will be in Nebraska, but I will make every effort to find some kind of internet source.
That sounds a lot less romantic than California.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's payback.
Mhm.
It's not for everybody, right?
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
That's their state motto, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Second. Aye.
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 Opposed? Thanks, everybody.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.